Hello. Today is Thursday, September 23rd, and welcome to the 8:30 show. I'm KJ, and every Thursday night you will find me here at 8:30 p.m. on YouTube at Metro Conservative Media. Please hit the subscribe button and give me a thumbs up. At the same time, I'm also live on Facebook at the Metro Conservative Media page. Please like our page and join the conversation by commenting on this video. We will respond to your comments during the show. This is a show where I chat with various individuals about their conservative journey. Tonight, my guest is author Kwon Lee. He is a Korean-American painter with gestural mark making harmonizes expressive color palettes with world mythologies. His work has won awards from George Washington University, the Korean Arts Association, and the Corcoran Gallery of Art, and most recently the inaugural title of Artist of the Year by Eileen Kaminsky Family Foundation. Lee draws inspiration from a broad range of sources, including Jungian psychoanalysis, local religious traditions, and his lifelong commitment to martial arts. All right. Welcome. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having me, KJ. That was quite the intro.
Yes, you're quite the individual. So I'm really excited about our interview.
Fabulous. Yeah, I'm excited to share my journey here.
Okay. All right. Well, before we get into your journey, I always start off with a fun question and answer round. It's kind of like this or that. So basically, it's a rapid fire round where the audience will get to know you in a more fun way.
Cool.
All right. So basically, like I said, I'll just give you two options and you pick the option that's closest to what you agree with or disagree or will agree with.
Perfect.
All right. So let's see here. All right. Well, this is a question. What are you most known for amongst your friends?
I'm known for two things. One, I'm known for being a defector of the radical left elite in the gallery space. And I'm also known for, I'm known for loving the martial art world. And because that's something I do adamantly when I'm outside the studio.
Okay. All right. This is a random one. Kanye West, genius or idiot?
Oh, genius. We'll go with genius. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, with the context of understanding that, look, his articulation may not be the most sexy, but we have to understand that there's wisdom associated with the fact that you're at the height of this position, getting every offer from the dark one, and you say Jesus is king. There's something deep going on there, you know.
Okay. What quality do you value most in your friends?
You know what it is people who can honor their parents and believe in tradition, I will say, because one of my things is, reject modernity and embrace tradition. So those who honor tradition.
Wow. Okay. All right. The next is, which would you prefer, big party or small gathering?
Small gathering, like 8 to 12 folks, of similar values. That's a good time for me.
Okay. All right. Next is bigger world issue to you, racism or communism?
Communism, collectivism. Yeah, communism.
Okay.
Yeah, because it'll use that language to placate whatever they want, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. All right. And then the last one, which would you, if you had to choose one or the other, this is a question. Be painfully aware or be blissfully ignorant if you had to choose one or the other?
I like to do the whole blissfully aware thing, but I would say if I have to choose one, of course I'm going to take you're being Morpheus right now, right? I'll take the red pill. I'll pain is fine,
Okay.
It's knowing what's right will endure it and it'll be an antidote. So. All
right. Yeah. All right. Well, that's everything. You see how it's kind of like
I make that so boring because I was
good. I liked your response to the question on your most valued quality in your friends. because your answer was something people I've never had answer that way before. So, and that's something to really think about tradition. And yeah, so I definitely that was the most interesting response I've had so far.
There you go. Yeah, that's how you do it.
Yes, indeed. All right. So I'm going to get into pretty much the bulk of our chat tonight, which is, one, your conservative journey. And then I wanted to get into also the art and your opinion on art today, and then of course your art as well. So can you walk me through? I assume you are a Republican. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So have you always been a Republican, or when did your Republican journey begin?
So here's the thing. So as a visual artist, if you meet most artists today, they're gonna vote more towards the left. And not only that, if you look at the art industry, it is, anesthetized with social justice and woke politics, essentially.
Right.
Because it's much more of an emotional field. But with that said, growing up as an artist, if people asked me what was I politically, I would tell them I was a liberal, but it was actually because I just didn't know anything. So I was surrounded with all these other artists, and they're liberals, and I was kind of doing my own thing as a painter. And because I was acclimated with other liberals, I assumed, I guess I'm a liberal too. So people will say, do you think, Black Lives Matter? And I'll say, of course, Black Lives Matter. What a stupid question that is. So for me, I was at a commonsensical sort of frame where I was just surrounded with other woke liberals. So I just assumed, I guess that's the frame I was in. But what started to happen was I started to go within and start to realize the fact that a lot of these woke people, they don't believe in decency. They're very unpleasant. It's the negative demeanor that they carry themselves with that sort of pushed me to the right. So I often tell people I didn't even pick the right, I was pushed to the right. Because anything that I would say that disagrees with them, that did not fit their plantation narrative to controlling me based on identity or category, they'd castigate me. So I'm not a fan of that. I believe in genuine diversity, diversity of opinion, not diversity of skin tone. So as an artist, I need to have the open-mindedness and be conscientious that is a part of creativity. So my journey to becoming a conservative was just the fact that if I really want to excavate ideas deeper, I needed to get sort of past this radical Marxism that is so limiting, So I had to kind of transcend that noise. So yeah, I'm definitely I'm a conservative, but it's funny because my root for being a conservative is actually more aesthetic.
Okay.
I'm more of a conservative for aesthetic reasons, and I think it's important for conservatives to also appreciate that side of the equation, because of course we have superior economic strategies towards immigration, taxation, we have better argumentation on abortion, every issue, but also we have better aesthetics. So I'm romantically attracted to the sentiments of the Conservative Party. So I'm a conservative for artistic reasons, believe it or not.
And can you expand on that as far as what specifically are you attracted to the conservative movement as far as aesthetics and things like that?
Absolutely, yeah. Because if you anytime anyone who's listening, if you've ever walked into a gallery and you see this vague, weird, kind of, no offense, but like childish, foolish, preposterous art, that was made by a liberal. And because liberals, they believe in this notion of aesthetic relativity. And conservatives, we believe in tradition and patterns. So that means universal standards. We believe in passed down pedagogical expectations. So we have objective standards. The left ultimately, of course we can say political correctness is a tool to shut the right up, but the left is ultimately a propounder of relativism. They want relativity. They want social deconstructionism. They want this idea that anything can be anyone. Man can be woman. There's no boundaries. It's all vague and miasmic, so that even their art, the aesthetics are ugly. See, if you see a conservative make artwork, there's tradition inside of it. There's technical, classical skills, and there's, quite frankly, higher standards. So I guess that's the base root of it. Even the aesthetics of what is born out of the right is higher. Especially because some of the greatest artwork is undergirded by a spiritual orientation towards God. So just that alone makes a higher level of beauty towards something more sacred. So the aesthetics on the right are superior to the left as well. That's why they prefer to become the gatekeepers, because they can't compete with us on anything. But if you become, like the manager of a company, then everyone's got to suck up to you. You know what I mean? That's kind of what's going on. Yeah.
Okay. And one thing you mentioned was decency. So, and that's something that's actually been thrown around a lot lately, especially with the Texas abortion ban bill that's passed. You have a lot of people on the left, especially pro-choice, pro-abortion supporters, who have been arguing that the right has no decency because all we care about are babies in the womb and not babies after they're born. Can you speak to that? And you don't have to speak specifically to abortion, but just as far as decency, how is that pretty much, what does the right do that you feel is more decent than the left?
Well, you know what you just said, this idea of how they're treating this abortion case in Texas, that unpleasantry ventriculates onto every issue that they carry themselves with. I'll tell you right now that there's this idea that comes from the Bible that ignorance is arrogance. And that's sort of why when you look at these protests on the streets where they're causing property damage, showing their vehemence and their anger and their lack of respect or any perspective, it's all shameless, So for me, it's I look at the radical left as the most privileged class of people in Western history. That's why they expect everyone to just kowtow to the horse manure that they're spewing. So the lack of decency, what I mean by that is that they don't have the guts to look within or look at a mirror and perhaps say, okay, maybe I'm the one being distasteful. Maybe it's not everyone else in the world. Maybe it's not a toxic patriarchy. Maybe it's not these right-wing people. Maybe it's my own issues that I haven't reconciliated, and maybe it's the fact that your family grew up without any spiritual standards, so now they're exploitable by the state. Maybe you have lost your social cohesion, so now you're projecting it onto other people. They would never have the gonads to even do that, because that takes an alpha mindset.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be an alpha male to be able to be perspicacious and look at yourself in the mirror clearly. And liberals, they do not have that capacity.
All right. Yeah, I agree.
I want to move on to something about the art. So one thing I saw, firstly, can you talk about how your art plays into your conservative thinking and how that goes hand in hand?
Absolutely. So first, there's familiar roots. My father, he's a senior pastor, and he's also the president of the Council of Korean Churches in the DMV. So he's got a lot of, he's a public influential figure, but he's acclimated in this religious community. So there's that half of the equation. And my mother, she's a composer with her dissertation in music theory. So I often tell people I'm this visual fusion of them. Well, I'm exploring religious principles and values but with my brush instead of musicality. So that's half of the equation. And that sort of lies a blueprint as to why I was attracted to the subject matter. But what took that even further and pushed that, crystallized that even further, is when you study art history, some of the greatest masterpieces that I was always moved by were artists that had a sort of spiritual inclination or an appreciation for that transcendent morality. And for me, I can get a little personal here. I went through a phase during when I was in art school where I became very atheistic, and I became, sort of in my own tunnel vision of life. And one thing I noticed, though, I'm sharing this because I noticed that when I was in that phase of my life, I could not help but be attracted to painting spiritual imagery. It was the most beautiful form of art. The sacred is the most cherished form of beauty. The highest form of beauty is the sacred. So I couldn't help but be attracted to spiritual subject matter. And, eventually, if you go down that rabbit hole enough, you're going to feel more of a conservative predilection because you want to preserve. You want to preserve. And that's where my language began to be formed, where I was first interested in just spiritual imagery itself and sort of trying to make the old new, if that makes sense. Painting all the ancients, but with this new painting materiality and techniques, so I can sort of resurface the wisdom of the past. That was my initial attraction. But as I went down that route, I come across Joseph Campbell, Carl Jung, all of these thinkers that are tremendously deep and make you realize that you haven't even stepped 1 foot fully in the rabbit hole. And that's sort of where I am right now, where I'm sort of exploring that realm, and it's never ending with that regard. But it's, you know, the technical part of it in regards to my painting practice, that's my life's work. That's my love right there. You know, painting is truly my heart. I go into the studio, and that's where I want to excavate this symbolism. That's the language of my craft.
Oh, and you speak so eloquently. Like, it's just, I can listen to you talk all day about this.
Thank you.
Yes.
It comes from the heart.
Yes. And you can tell, you can feel that it does come from the heart, and that's important. I would love to see your work. I'm sure you express that in your work also.
Sure. I'm sure. And everyone can check it out. If you just Google Arthur Kwon Lee, but there's something I also just started. I started this very recently. It's a community, and it's a specifically vetted community that I just started called the Genesis Council. And it's very specific because I've actually already rejected 5 people in the orientation interview process. It's a membership community, and it's highly vetted. And the goal is to get conservatives to participate in the arts. And it really is because, you know, we hear this notion ad nauseum that politics is downstream from culture. Everyone says that over and over again, but they're kind of saying it as an empty mantra without being active participants. What I want to do is I want us to actually be a part of the culture war. Because if you look at how 2 ways people can disseminate information, right? There's 2 ways. One is intellectually, and conservatives are very good at that. We stack a lot of red pill evidence, right? This is our information, but we tend to throw it in each other as an echo chamber. The other way is romantically, and that's in the arts. Now, if you watch the cultural discourse, it tells you everything, because the right is using Pew polls, data, statistics from the BLS, all valid. And the left doesn't even bother with any of that, because if they go into that territory with us, they will be disseminated. They will be knocked down to a million pieces. So what does the left do? They focus on putting all their eggs in big tech, academia, Hollywood, the art gallery, entertainment. So those are all spheres of influence at different economic levels that can determine who is a good guy and who is a bad guy. So they have their hands on the driver's wheel of the narrative. So while we're talking about all this data as stoic, data-driven men, which is so important, the left is too busy getting all the hearts of the next generation and influencing all the people on the fence. So my thing is, the moment conservatives get into the arts, there's a reason why I've been blacklisted by all the Lower East Side. There's a reason why I am on New York City Antifa list. There's a reason why I get threats and all this shenanigan just for being a conservative introvert artist, which I never thought they would care about, by the way. Like, it's strange that they even care what this artist in the studio thinks, because they believe they own the arts. And if you start coming in with your red MAGA hat, you better get out of here. That's the logic. And my thing is, I'm saying, you know what? I'm already pretty much completely independent, you know, in my career as an artist. I want to proliferate this idea where conservatives can come together and really be a part of the culture and take the culture back. So that's why I started the Genesis Council.
Now let me ask you this. So what has been the feedback you've gotten from the art community? I know you've mentioned you've gotten some negative feedback, but what about your friends? I'm sure you have friends who are in the art community who know your views. What is the response that you've gotten?
Well, you know, all my friends who are in the same gallery space as me, that sphere, they're all afraid to come out. It's like a homosexual thing or something, to say that they're conservative. They're all afraid to do what I did, because what happened? You know, I was a part of this elitist world, and they gave me Artist of the Year 2 years in 2016 for different organization. Let me first say that the residency that gave me that Artist of the Year award, also for 2020, they're not woke. They're very cool. But my point is that whole circle, you know, getting written in all their magazines, all the coverage, all the following, getting 6 solo shows in a year, all this crazy momentum. And then once they hear about my political disposition and my biology and beliefs, they don't want anything to do with me and they silence me. So the reason why the story matters is because it's your story. You know, it's anyone's story who believes in tradition, conservative values, and the family and freedom of speech. They believe in these things, but now they want to exercise their creativity. What happens? The left shuts you up. And my point is that we need to find a way to consolidate amongst each other, and we need to, you know, novelty has taken such a harsh crash because the left has taken over, and all their art is it lacks depth. There's nothing attractive about their art besides this avant-garde elitism of trying to seem like the cool kids, but it means nothing to me. So that's why I created the Genesis Council, so we can actually take the culture back. And we already have some heavy hitters in the group, and we have some amazing learning resources as well as people who've never picked up a brush. We're gonna equip you with all. We're gonna give you the tools of the trade, and you're gonna affect it at a grassroots level, at a micro level. Put the art in your home, make it a familial glue of influence your community, and at a macro level, we're working on other things too. You know, we have some PhD level people in the mix. So, yeah, this is serious. Yeah, I'm really about. I take the culture war seriously because I know how much unconsciously is happening behind the red curtain that is affecting us. You know, I'll prove it to you right now. Let's say your audience is listening. If I ask you to recite like the 150th line of the Constitution, you probably can't tell me. But if I say, it seems today that all we see is violence in movies, and you can finish that line for me, because everyone's watched Family Guy. You see what I'm saying? So it's because that's culture. There's music, there's television, there's arts, there's a work you see. It's what's facilitating your brain. That is the autopilot. That is the unconscious. And conservatives going in there, I think that's where the battle is won. Once the right takes the arts seriously, the left is going to freak out because they put all their eggs there. That's what people don't realize. Hollywood, big tech, you know what it is.
And one thing I did see on your website was a quote, a phrase you posted. It says, beauty is not in the eye of the beholder. So can you expand on that? Where is it then? Because you do hear this beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Yes. So imagine you saw a ballerina. You went to see let's say you go to see Swan Lake with your kids or something. And you see, and then you know what to expect. You expect choreography of the nth degree. You expect high standards. And let's say they start wearing, I don't know, they don't do ballet. They go on stage and they do some stomping around. It's just a mess, and they demand you to applaud. That's the same thing as me putting out a canvas, and you paid me to do a commission. You want me to paint your grandmother, right? And what do I paint? I paint a bunch of scribble lines. What's the difference? And then I expect you to say, no, this is avant-garde. It's different. It's new age. No, that's just the excuse. Beauty by definition are like, there is relativity to it, and there is cultural. That's all there. But even in those pillars, beauty by definition is still universally defined by boundaries refined to the nth degree. Look at some bodybuilder that looks physically amazing. Look at some nice car. You know, look at a genuine, beautiful Greek sculpture, you know, but they're trying to convince you this idea that we need to throw objective standards out the window because, frankly speaking, they don't have the ability to endure and produce they don't have the actual capacity to endure anything and produce that into art. And yeah, this is where you know, we got to come into the picture. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I agree. I know I was talking with a group of people a couple of months ago, and it was a group of conservatives and a group of woke leftist people. And the leftist people were pushing, I'm not sure if you're familiar with transhumanism. And so they were pushing this movement of, and they were calling it kind of art, but more so where they were, not transhumanism, I'm sorry, yes, transhumanism, and pushing it towards saying that this is the way where the next wave is to incorporate humans and AI. And this is what you see with the movement the transgender movement, and then just blending of androgyny. You see a lot of that
Yeah.
in art, and then also in fashion. What are your thoughts on that? Because we see that it's everything.
You see that in everything, and what they're trying to do is, they're trying to make us collectively lower our standards so much that we can no longer look at things from the scales of the spirit, essentially. What they really want us to do is let go of a belief that there's a higher order. Just by that alone, they're gonna get a lot. But the thing is, it's funny because everything the left does, all of their anger, all their argumentation, everything, it's not a pyramid, it's a backwards pyramid. The foundation is very weak. It's on one point. Their foundation is on one thing. Every single argument you hear, whether it's race-related, gender-related, whatever the divide and conquer strategy is, it's on one linchpin, which is an unearned sense of moral superiority. That is everything. That is their foundation, and it's all it is. Once you can remove that, it all comes falling. I remember when I used to have an art studio in Adams Morgan, KJ. This is before I came to New York City, and I remember there's all these people coming through from the Women's March going through, and I remember thinking, free country, do what you want, but it was loud and noisy and all this stuff. But I walked outside. There's all these, some of these movements start to mix, to get blended. Gay rights can be there too. BLM can be there too. It kind of ends up getting mixed with different Democrat agendas. But I go outside, and there's these gay pride flag holding people. I'm like, okay, whatever, do whatever you want. But the way they're dressed in these black leotard, assless chaps, like decadence normalizing in front of children.
Right.
They're using now the homosexual agenda to make it seem like if you say anything, it's because you're homophobic. That's their whole thing. Like, they'll flip everything on you. If I don't like the artwork of somebody else, let's say I don't like someone's art, and then she happens to be a woman, instead of looking at the quality of the art, the specific situation, they're going to say, oh, it's because, you're sexist. So it's always racist, sexist, bigot, homophobe who hates the poor. It's always that. It's just a shape-shifting version of all this. I remember when they started this whole Stop Asian Hate thing, and then these woke people come up to me, like, they see my slanted eyes, they go, hey, you're part of this, right? Yes, we got you something you can get behind. I'm like, no, get away from me. Get away from me. Get away from me. My friends who are black conservatives, they tell me, don't fall for this. It's like BLM. I'm like, I know. I'm not stupid. So I saw this immediately, and this is all they know how to do, divide and conquer, and we're all seeing through it, though. That's the good news.
Yeah, you're right. We are. One thing I wanted the last thing, because we're almost running out of time.
Okay.
But on your website, you have this also quote that I wanted to hear you expand on. It's the antidote to the collective decadence and vanity today is that of reverence. The core values of excellence, tradition, masculinity, introspection, and communion function together to produce art that carries this weight and is the essence of the council's identity. So can you expand on that a little bit as far as what you mean by that?
My pleasure. So those are the core values of the Genesis Council. So we had, I told you I rejected 5 liberals already because, when they were in the orientation, their thinking was probably the average art collective is like $150 a month to be a part of this community, and this is probably the cheaper one. That was probably like their thinking. Mm-hmm. So they came into it, and the first thing I tell them is, no. During the interview, like this, it's on Zoom, I said, do you believe in freedom of speech, the right to bear arms, and the family? And they went, what the hell? I thought this was an art collective. I'm like, it is an art collective, but it's an art collective with specific values because we want to uphold specific values symbolically in our art. And they just look so confused because they just thought it was an art community, and then they're just liberals, and they walked into the door here. They didn't realize they're going to meet this man who speaks his mind. So I rejected them, but those are the pillars that we need to have excellence in art. Because I don't want us to just make art that has the right values, socially cohesive values. I also want us to make art that is excellent and the best of our ability. And one of those 5 foundations is masculinity, because ultimately, what's there's an attack on conservatives, but it's really the attack on 2 things. It's the attack on objectivity, and it's the attack on masculinity, because they want to remove masculinity because, like this, the reality is that you hear this shit about toxic masculinity, right? All these shenanigans. The absence of masculinity is what is toxic. Men who do not have masculinity are not loyal to their wives. They do not believe in God. They do not believe in taking care of their children. Real masculinity is benevolent, and it's supportive, and it helps people's creativity. So the absence of it is really the problem. And my thing is we need to bring back that. And masculinity is conservatism. That's another thing. So
can you expand on that? What do you mean? How is that conservatism? You mean it's a part of conservatism, or it is actual conservatism?
They're both about setting boundaries that we should not cross based on passed down traditions. They're both about understanding. Joseph Campbell talks about Mother Nature, Father Culture, and we need to honor both, right? But we should also recognize that, look, there's patterns here. And sometimes the reason why the Bible might say something isn't because it's just an old book. That's the whole point. Maybe there's transcendent wisdom in there from thousands of history. Maybe we should tune into that.
Right.
And that's sort of the whole idea that, masculinity's role is to get the wisdom of our ancestors and to still carry the same sentiment, but in a modern way, so that the next generation can interpret and appreciate it. And that's kind of the role of men. And I think men are not men anymore. So that's why all these beta males are out on the streets, pronouncing hookup culture and patriarchy, whatever you want to call it, because they have no testosterone.
Well, that's true. And not only that, but it speaks to order. And when you think about the left, everything is chaotic. They don't believe in any type of order and any type of patriarchy. So this is why they push against masculinity, because masculinity also, I hear that go too. Masculinity also goes towards some type of order, and they don't believe in order. I was in the mall a couple of days ago, and this woman walks up to me and she said, "Oh, hey," she was like, it was in Howard County, and she said, "Hey, we have a church we just started and wanted to know if you'd be interested in joining." So I said, well, what's the church about? And so she was like, well, we believe that God was a woman and a male. And I said, what? And it made me think, I didn't entertain anything else she said, but to me, it made me think about how chaotic the world is today. And this is why we have people believing this type of stuff.
It's it's clown world. And I'm here in New York City, where all I hear is nothing but anger and vehemence towards me regularly, but I know what's right. I know what's right in my heart. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where I am. I mean, I'm going to get out of here because I've had like fireworks shot at my window. I mean, I've had all the stuff. Yeah. So I'm going to get out of here for the safety of it. But in regards to what's right, in your heart, and their whole thing is they just want to keep covering their heart. And that's all the left does. And that's why we gotta take back the culture.
All right. Well, this is, as I mentioned, we are at the end of our time. Can you, is there anything you'd like to share as far as anything you have going on, or where people can find you in your work?
There's a couple things. One is I started this community called the Genesis Council, and this is specifically about trying to make art great again. We're trying to bring back conservative ideals. We're trying to bring back religious orientation, and using our brushes to point towards the logos. Cathartic art making where we can support one another and influence our own communities. That's one. Number two is if you want to see my art, you want to check out my paintings in depth, and if you're interested in collecting and becoming a part of the journey here, you go to arthurkwonlee.com. And then finally, I will be speaking at the 21 convention in Orlando on October 21st. And I'll be talking about elaborating a little bit further from art historical context about what the left has done to the art world and how we need to bring back, these traditional values and restore the sacred.
All right. And then lastly, I ask all guests, what is your number one hope for your community? And then what is your number one concern?
I hope that men of our generation can understand that if you want to live up to your potential and be an alpha to the highest extent, it is not participating in this extended adolescence of Peter Pan and hooking up with women. I hope they understand that a true alpha male, the highest form of masculinity is being a father, and that is one above it. So I hope men can grow up, and I hope men can exercise their romantic archetype selectively.
All right, excellent.
Yes, beautiful.
Yeah,
thank you so much for having me, and keep fighting the good fight. I you guys are doing great things.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and you the same. I'm going to go ahead and check out your website, and I look forward to purchasing some of your work.
Let's go. Beautiful.
Yeah. All right. So that wraps up this episode of the 8:30 show. We are all over social media under Metro Conservative Media. Like, share, and leave a comment, and follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. Also, check out our website, www.metroconservativemedia.com. We love to get your feedback. I hope to connect with you again next Thursday at the same time. Wishing you warm days and starry nights. Good night.